Prepare the Aerotherm for trowel application. Add a small amount of water, up to and no more than 5%. The porosity of the substrate will determine how much water will need to be added. The more porous the surface, the more water will be required. It is essential to minimise the amount of air being mixed into the Aerotherm to prevent air pockets showing when applied to the surface. We recommend hand mixing with either a bucket trowel or plasterer's hand mixer, sometimes known as a pacą, to produce a smooth consistency. You must ensure it has all been properly mixed through, as the binder may have settled at the bottom of the container. Storing the Aerotherm tubs upside down will help with this. Mixing to the correct consistency will help make it easier to apply with a trowel. Too dry and the product will curl up away from the surface. Too wet and the product will run down the wall and take longer to dry. We recommend a 6mm notched trowel held at a 30° angle. This will create 2mm ridges which can then be smoothed over to a consistent covering. Filling in any gaps will help achieve a consistent 1mm coating when smoothing over. A clean, large, flexible floating trowel will minimise any trowel marks. Apply each section of Aerotherm in appropriate quantities depending on your speed of application. Do not leave the trowel lines too long before you float over, as the material dries quickly. It is not possible to float Aerotherm to a perfectly flat finish. As long as the wall has a consistent 1mm coverage, then be prepared to leave trowel lines in the product and leave it to dry. The sanding process will easily remove any trowel lines. Depth gauges are a useful tool to check you have applied a consistent 1mm coating. Aerotherm takes between 24 and 48 hours to dry depending on the ambient room temperature. The surface should then be lightly sanded. A handheld sponge float with fine finishing paper should be used to remove any high spots and trowel lines. Brush off dust from the wall and the sander as you go to prevent any build-up causing scratch marks. Aerotherm is much easier to sand as soon as it has dried. Leaving it a further 24 hours after it has dried will make it more difficult to sand. Bear this in mind when planning your project. Scrape off any excess material into the corners. Smooth down corners with additional Aerotherm using either a suitable tool or your finger. Fill in any remaining indentations with a general filler using a palette knife. You can then go over the whole area with fine finishing paper. Leave Aerotherm to fully dry by heating and regularly ventilating the room. The drying time will depend on climatic conditions and should be a minimum of a week before decoration is applied. When painting, follow industry best practice as if painting new plaster, allowing each paint layer to dry properly before applying further coats. We recommend using a moisture meter to ensure that each layer is dry before proceeding onto the next layer. Aerotherm leaves a semi-hard finish on a wall. In most instances this will be perfectly acceptable as a wall finish and can be easily repaired with filler or Aerotherm itself if it is dented. If a more durable finish is required, then lining paper can be applied to the wall, which itself can be wallpapered or painted. The finished product, when painted or lining papered, you don't even know it's there, unless you touch the wall and feel how warm it is.